welcome back to my channel. It's Christine Grace and today is another reaction video. Today we are reacting to a Piers Morgan video. I remember growing up, the only time I ever really saw Piers Morgan was on something like Britain's Got Talent, and being a woman leading with my emotions, I was not a fan. He really triggered me because I thought, why is he being so mean? I often thought he was quite mean, but now I just think it's good telly, it's good entertainment, and he does make good telly. So yeah, let's see what he's saying today.
Pearl Davis has racked up a legion of online followers and plenty of breathless newspaper coverage by sharing her incendiary views on modern feminism. The New York Post called her the female Andrew Tate. So she tapped into genuine female pushback to the excesses of wokery, or is she just an attention seeker? We'll find out in a moment. But first, let's take a look at the clip that sent her viral.
A lot of people think I'm insane because I don't think women should vote. Everybody thinks I'm crazy for this opinion. If anything, this is probably my most extreme opinion. 90% of women have been on birth control. 1 out of 3 women has had an abortion. 1 out of 3 women has an STD. Average body count is over 5, so that your average wife has slept with over 5 people. 95% of women are not virgins on their wedding days. So I understand the complaint.
OK, well, Pearl joins me now alongside political journalist Ava Santini, who was nodding furiously along there to everything she heard. Right, Pearl, you've been called the female Andrew Tate. How do you plead?
Well, I take it as a compliment. You know, I'm a fan of Andrew Tate.
Of everything he says?
It depends what we're talking about. But overall, I think he's got a good message. I think he's good for young men. OK, look, you're talking about women predominantly, which is why you've got this big following. And your view is that modern feminism is deeply flawed. I would argue a lot of your proposals, like taking the vote away from women, are deeply regressive. Why would you want to remove, just from yourself, the right to vote? Well, what happened was I had the same view, right? Back when I started, I was like, why? I found out that only 5% of women wanted the right to vote. And I couldn't figure out, like, why would women not? No, it's true. It's true. You look it up.
At the time?
At the time.
Because they've been conditioned by men to think that they shouldn't have a vote.
I mean,
I think that's presumptuous, Piers.
They say, but, you know, I started reading their writings, right? And what I found out was that the reason a lot of women advocated for it was because they believed it was the beginning of the breakdown of the family. You know, before you became one in marriage, 85% of people were married.
And feminism wants the breakdown of the family. We know that from the history of feminism.
And, you know, I hate to say it, but they were right. What has happened 100 years later?
Well, what's that got to do with them having the vote?
Well, it also goes back to responsibility. Again, men are 80 to 90% of the military. They run all of the infrastructures that make society run. So I just think if we want an equal say in society, then be equal. Do 50% of the hard jobs. Be 50% of the military. In the U.S., they're fined $250,000 if they don't join selective service, which is essentially the draft.
Okay, but specifically on the vote, what would having the right to vote have to do with family cohesion, for example?
Well, because again, before you weren't trying to divide a family. It was one family unit. You had one vote for the family. I mean, I don't think it's good for a family to have 2 votes.
Ava, your mouth seems to have dropped about 3 feet.
I know.
It's just sort of a bit galaxy brain. I feel like, you know, the stats that you're putting down are perhaps correct in some universe.
Which stats?
They just kind of don't really add up. I mean, just to take you back to the to the women's writings that you've allegedly read. I mean,
allegedly? What do you mean allegedly?
At the time that you're talking about, you know, women weren't really allowed to write. They weren't allowed to go to school.
Yes, they
Right.
This is all just narrative with no actual evidence to support it. It's all just narrative.
That's incorrect. The first female property owner was in the 1600s. The idea that women couldn't work and couldn't.
I'm so sorry, but that would be inherited property.
The first female.
She's laughing because she thinks she knows what she's talking about without actually having looked into it herself.
Millionaire was in the late 1800s.
And was that inherited?
No, it wasn't. It was self-made. Yes, it was.
Self-made.
Yes, it was.
She never inherited land.
Yes, she did not inherit it.
What law permitted that?
What?
What law permitted that?
Well, there was no law. I mean, there's always been women that were influential in history.
Let's get on to the vote. So what I don't understand is, you know, a part of your message, I've researched you today, and hang on a minute.
Okay.
You know, your big push is that you care about men and you don't think that men are getting enough of a say. But
I care about
hang
women
on,
too.
I haven't made the point yet.
Okay.
Because of feminism, okay? What I wonder is when you start making calls out like repeal the 19th, women shouldn't be allowed allowed to vote. How is that helping young men? Because these young men have women in their lives. They have mothers, they have sisters, they have teachers. And they turn around, they don't know how to act around women because you're giving them license to be misogynistic.
I wouldn't call it misogynistic.
Misogynistic is a fundamental hatred of women. And Pearl is not saying that she wants to take away the right for women to vote because she hates women. She's giving an opinion and she's explaining why she holds that opinion based on the evidence before her and the conclusions that she's come to upon the analysis of the evidence that she has come across. And, you know, I just think it's a bit rich and ridiculous to say that she can't be entitled to hold that opinion. And actually, you know, when I first heard it, I thought, oh, wow, like, that's rather provocative. It's going to upset a lot of people. And it will upset a lot of people. But so, like, it's just feelings. And when I thought about it, I thought, you know, I don't know if I agree with that. But actually, I do get it. You know, when you give the mother and the father in the home, if we're talking about the destruction of families, when you give them both the right to vote, it takes away the family unit. The family no longer becomes a unit and the two become political. I'm specifying on political individuals. So therefore, you could have people who are married whose political ideas completely don't align. And personally, I believe that any relationship that's going to work long term, you need to have the same fundamental values, so the same basic ideas. Everything else can vary, but the core values need to be pretty aligned. Otherwise, you're going to end up disagreeing on everything. If the core isn't compatible, everything else around it is going to fall apart. Whereas the core can be compatible, and a few things around the edges could be a mess, but you can work with that. That's just my way of seeing it. And another thing that also, you know, I listened to again, like, when I first heard her say this, I was kind of like, wow, like, you know, your first reaction is to go, oh, but you have to be open. You have to be willing to hear why people think what they think. And another thing I heard was how in places like Ukraine, men and women voted to be part of NATO, which ultimately caused the war with Russia. But yet the women have now all pretty much left Ukraine and gone to wherever. They're not the ones left having to fight in the war. So I do get the whole, you know, why are they getting to vote on something that ultimately isn't actually going to affect them? You know, they're essentially playing with men's lives. They're voting for something that ultimately only affects the men. And I think when you hear stuff like that, can you not see why Pearl has come to this conclusion? Even if you don't solely agree with it completely, can you not at least fathom why someone would hold that stance? I just think there's a bit of a lack of awareness here to understand that not everyone is going to think the same. And upon a selection of evidence in front of all different people, each person is going to come to different conclusions. And me personally, when presented with the two pieces of evidence I just stated, I completely get why Pearl came to that conclusion. Yeah.
I say be equal. So again, men do all of that. Well, then, okay, I'd love for the feminists, please apply for the oil rigs. Please go do the hard jobs in society. They're open, they're hiring because
Pearl is not saying that she thinks we're equal. She's just acknowledging what she thinks. This is what the leftists and the liberals do. They completely try and make a mockery of anyone who thinks different to them. They can't fathom the idea that people could think different to them. It's just a shame.
I don't equate I don't think men or women are equal until we do the equal work. So no, listen. Go apply to be on the oil rigs. Go be a plumber, go be an electrician, go be on the front lines of the military, and then we should have equal rights. But until feminists are willing to do that, I don't believe we should have the freedom without the responsibility.
Okay, well, I don't think that I'm physically built for that. You might be, but
See, so you can acknowledge that men and women aren't equal in physical stance. But again, like, I'm just having this piece of evidence raise in my mind the Ukraine situation. So why should the women be voting on whether or not the country goes to war when they're not participating in the war? It's not their lives at stake. And I think that's a rather ignorant stance to have. And it's very entitled because it's like, well, I still get a say on whether men live or die because, well, I'm not built for it. It's just it doesn't add up. It doesn't correlate.
I'm absolutely
That's
not.
a bit-
You
Wow.
said you were a
Wow,
volleyball.
wow.
You said you were a volleyball player, and so you've got more strength than I do. I don't think
But
that
I don't
can
have more
do
strength.
those
I don't have
jobs.
more strength
But
than
I'm
the
not
average
gonna take your
man.
right away to
I don't
do
have
it.
I don't have more strength than the average man. But again, it goes back to go be a plumber. You want to be equal, go be equal.
But you want divorce to be made illegal.
Yes.
Why?
Yes, because I don't think what we have today is really marriage. What is marriage? It's for better or for worse, for richer.
I think it's very hard to criminalize something like divorce. Whilst on the basis of it, I haven't put much thought into it. I would say, yeah, I completely agree. But I think an option would be to really not incentivize divorce. And I don't just mean take away the incentives to women to initiate divorce. I mean actually put a penalty on divorce. Make a penalty to disincentivize people to get divorced. Because I've spoke about this before. When you have people who are religious, the religious people don't want to get divorced because they have made an oath in front of God, and that's enough to them to move them away from the idea of divorce. Whereas a lot of people aren't religious nowadays, and what do a lot of people care about nowadays? Money. You know, why do a lot of people get divorced? Money. So if you put a penalty on divorce, that could be a solution to the problem that she's going to talk about. I have seen this interview before. I didn't know that it was going to be Pearl and Piers Morgan that I was reacting to. But yeah, this is fun.
For poor, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. That's what marriage is supposed to be. But feminists have ruined marriage for the people that actually believe in marriage.
How?
When there's a 50% divorce rate, and the average marriage
Why is that all
8
down to the
years.
women, though?
I didn't say that it was all down to the women.
So why
But
feminists ruin it?
you asked why I want divorce to be banned.
Yeah.
Can I finish
Yeah.
that first? So I'm saying, the people that believe in divorce, go be in long-term relationships. Leave marriage for the people that actually believe in for better or for worse, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, till death do us part.
Doesn't the sanctity of marriage also rely on the woman being a virgin? So you wouldn't be able to get married.
What do you mean?
Well, you've spoken quite openly about how you're not a virgin, and so if you want to preserve that sanctity of marriage, then I just think that you're upholding standards that.
People really can't fathom the idea that you can acknowledge an ideal without embodying that ideal, And actually, to be able to acknowledge the ideal is a good thing, because you can sit there and you can have the awareness to acknowledge your own faults. And that's a good thing. Instead of going around and saying, well, I think the world should just do exactly what I've done because shit happens. Like, that doesn't actually do anything. But to be able to say there is an ideal, there is a way that works. I haven't done that, but we can still talk about it. That's more productive. It leaves more room, and it actually helps the people who perhaps haven't been on your path to decipher what their path is going to be, because it means they get the personal experience of what someone's actually done with their life, and they can hear what that person thinks despite what they've actually been through and experienced. And I think it's important to be able to have those conversations. How do we get the wisdom from our elders? It's them telling us what they think, why they think it, and whether they followed it or not, and ultimately if they regretted following it or not. These are important conversations to have. I always hear this about Pearl, and I just think it's so reductionist, and it's ignorant, because people will say, like, Pearl preaches this, and this, but she doesn't embody that. She's not claiming to be the standard. She has never once claimed to be the standard. I'm not claiming to be the standard, but we can acknowledge changes in history. We can acknowledge how the standards have changed over time. And a lot of the time, Pearl is saying, in Pearl's perfect world, she always says, but she's not even saying that the standard now is the same as what it was 100 years ago, but she's just trying to highlight that it has changed. And people can't see that. They automatically just make these presumptions based on how they feel about what she's saying, instead of actually trying to understand what she's saying and why she's saying it, which I think is incredibly reductionist and incredibly ignorant. But we do live in a very liberal, ignorant world.
You don't actually live by.
And that's a fair complaint. I wish I was, but we can't go back. I don't know what you want me to say.
Yeah, but I just don't think it's fair that you get to.
That's it. We can acknowledge things that have happened, but we can't go back. But we can move forward, and we can acknowledge how things have changed, and to then decipher how things are going to change from the point where we're at now. But we have to be able to take the past into consideration to even see where we are in the first place, in order to move forward from where we are now into the future.
And you get to be paid for your views, and you're telling other women that they shouldn't be allowed to.
I think
hang on. Okay,
So you can't even have a hypothetical conversation. Like, I'm sure Pearl knows this isn't going to happen. They're not going to actually take away women's right to vote. But the fact that people are trying to police her thoughts, she thinks women shouldn't vote. Okay? She thinks that. And she said why she thinks that. And people are still screaming and whinging at her for thinking it. I'm sure we've all got thoughts and opinions that other people wouldn't agree with. It's human nature. Get a grip.
If I may, at some stage jump in, isn't the whole point of being a feminist, though, that women are entitled to have their own views?
Absolutely. And
so she's perfectly entitled to her views.
Yeah,
well put,
You might
Piers.
not like them,
but I'm here to challenge
Isn't she
them.
exercising her right as a... Are you a feminist?
No, I am not.
Really?
No, I wouldn't. Don't go that far.
You don't want to be a feminist?
No, because I think if feminists really believed in equality, but you guys don't, I would love for you. There is an oil rig hiring. There is an engineering
I would actually
firm
love to see
hiring.
Ava Santana on an oil rig.
No, seriously. There is a building being built next to my building. Go do it, feminists. Go do it. And me,
Paul,
I'm
doing
saying
the same job that I'm doing right now.
When you find the man you want to get married to, are you saying you will be with that man whatever happens the rest of your life?
yes, for the vows that we're supposed to live by.
How do you know you can...
If you don't like the vows, don't take them. Be in a relationship. That's the difference. If you don't agree with the vows, if you can't stick by the vows, don't take the vows. Don't get married. You can be in a long-term relationship.
I mean, I think it's a choice. And that's the thing, like, women are so willing to leave marriages because they're not happy. This is not about happiness. The most important thing is the children. And the problem is we have a modern society where it's me, my feelings, leave when I feel like it, instead of doing what's best for the kids.
Ava, I've got to say, it's a little bit listening to Andrew Tate where some of it I really don't agree with. I don't agree with the vote stuff. When I hear things like that, I think there'll be a lot of people, especially older generation women perhaps, who think, you know what, she's got a point.
Well, I mean, I believe in agency, so I think that if a woman is going to look after her children in divorce, that's absolutely fine. I also believe in your right to speak your mind about it. What I don't understand...
I'd like to
say...
She's saying all of this, but it doesn't really translate to anything.
Even before the 1920s,
Do you know what I mean?
women could speak openly. This idea that, like, women couldn't talk the last 500 years. There have been women throughout history.
The American state education system has failed before, and it's failing now.
There have been women throughout history that have read, written, and been very influential in society.
Okay.
So this idea, like, women could never do it.
Do you know what I don't understand, though, is when it gets spiteful, okay? Because you put down a few arguments that I think are perfectly, like, you know, they're kind of evangelical and they're Christian, but those are your right to say it. What I don't understand is when it kind of seeps into this sort of, you call women fat, you say that they shouldn't have abortions, you say that they have STDs. You know,
the question is, are they fat, yes or no? The average American woman is 170 fat.
Because we need judgment as a society, and you are allowed to hold your own judgments. Whether you go about and commit crimes based upon those judgments is a different story, but the need for judgment in a society is absolutely there. Otherwise, you have no legal system, you have no laws, you have no healthcare. If doctors can't discern what is an illness and what isn't, you have no healthcare. I've covered this in my series Debunking the Lunacy, my episode on tolerance, so please do go check it out.
That's objectively overweight.
I mean, let's be honest, we now celebrate morbid obesity as some kind of body positive thing, and it is complete nonsense. So actually on that point again, there's a bit of truth in
and
that.
This is the problem.
How have we come to celebrate morbid obesity as body positive?
Well,
it's nonsense.
We're not talking about morbid obese. I was actually watching your podcast earlier, and you spoke to someone who was, I would say, probably a size 12, and you called her fat, obese, and a divorcee.
She was fat, obese, and a divorcee.
wasn't.
I mean, like, I don't know what to say. This is the thing, women, we don't want to live in reality. We don't want to say things that are true. Was she fat? Yes. Was she a divorcee? Yes. These things are just objective facts.
Okay, I'm going to have to objectively...
And she insulted me first. They always...
I'm going to have to objectively end the debate, but it was an interesting conversation. I think we should get you two back together as a matter of urgency.
Yeah, I watched this interview live as it happened. I thought it was great that Pearl was appearing on Piers Morgan because, like, you know, having grown up here in the UK, I know who Piers Morgan is, and I've seen his career develop. So I was like, wow, like, she's going on national TV. That's amazing. Yeah, people often get very triggered by things that Pearl says, which is fine. You know, you can get triggered. But then they kind of project these presumptions and things onto her without actually listening to the words that she's saying, and they don't even attempt to understand where she's coming from. And we've all been guilty of that from time to time. But I do think Pearl faces a lot of it. Now, she is a very provocative individual. I get it, you know? A lot of people disagree with her. But that's fine. You know, she literally has a show where she encourages people to come on to disagree with her. So, you know, she's aware of reality. And the problem is when people are not aware of reality and they try and silence people just because they disagree with them. And yeah, that's when it gets dangerous. So yeah, that was a fun reaction. What did you think? Did you enjoy that video? Any thoughts that come to mind? Why don't you let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel. Like I said, go check out my series Debunking the Lunacy to find my video on the concept of tolerance. Have we become too tolerant in our society, or is the more tolerance better for society? Why don't you go check it out and then let me know what you think. I'll see you over there.